Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sports Mole's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law, and we're here to talk about the upcoming midweek games in the Premier League. I usually say the game week, but it's a bit all over the place this game week because there's matches which have been rearranged for originally being postponed. There's some teams playing their game in hand. But there are 6 games in midweek between Tuesday and Thursday we're going to look forward to in this one. And starting with Sheffield United versus Newcastle United, 2 teams in pretty poor form. Sheffield United obviously way down there at the bottom of the table, still 2 points from 17 games. Just it gets worse every week, but they are coming into it finally off the back of their first win of the season against Bristol Rovers in the FA Cup. Newcastle lost in the FA Cup against Arsenal to continue their poor form. I think it's now 7 games without a win across all competitions, and 5 defeats in that time. So 2 teams in desperate need of victory and in pretty poor form. How do you see this one going, Matt?
Yeah, it's a really big game, isn't it? You mentioned, I think, the FA Cup win for Sheffield United. I think Chris Wilder came out after the game and said he wants his team to use that result and take it into the Premier League. But I mean, I was just looking ahead of their fixtures coming up. Sheffield United to play Tottenham, Manchester United, Manchester City in the next 3 games after this one. So it's getting to the stage where, are they down already? It's going to be very difficult. But these are the sort of games, these are the perfect sort of games that if you're going to get back, you're going to put 3 points on the board, then, with respect to Newcastle, it's a nice game. But just struggling, to be honest. They scored 3, didn't they, against Bristol Rovers? But apart from that, I think they weren't great against Palace in their last Premier League game. What was that? Start of January now. I think Easy scored that great goal for Palace, didn't he? And they were doing okay in the game. But again, it was similar to the Burnley one before that. Just not a lot happening in the final third, struggling for goals, no goals in their last 3 Premier League games. And we spoke about it all season, that their problems in terms of, I think 8 goals this season, haven't they? Something, I think it's 8, and just nowhere near good enough, not enough in the final third. Newcastle, they've got a few fitness doubts for this game, some players that will hopefully be back. They made changes for the FA Cup game. Again, I thought that was a decent chance for Newcastle to maybe get through. Obviously went to extra time and Arsenal came through in the end, but disappointing because Newcastle, to have a cup run, I think would boost their confidence. But yeah, I've got a draw here, to be honest, 1-1. I think looking at the table, looking at both sides' form, Newcastle, they're just really hard to back, Newcastle. I know they're playing Sheffield United, but Sheffield United have played okay this season at home. Obviously the results have not been there, but I thought they've done quite well in stages of games. So Newcastle, I do struggle, to be honest, to back them. I think they've got a lot of good players, but it's really difficult. So I've gone 1-1 here.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same. I was actually very close to going Sheffield United. I've got a feeling they might be able to get something out of this game, and that really speaks volumes about the form Newcastle in, because obviously it's been so hard to back Sheffield United so far this season. I think just the record, it does make them pretty impossible to back them for a win. But I think, if I was to back a team to win this game, I think it probably would be Sheffield United. That FA Cup win, as you say, should give them the confidence maybe to build on it. That's all they needed. I think their start to the season has been a lot down to confidence. They're not getting beaten by a lot of games, by a lot of goals in each game, but they are getting beaten. And we've mentioned it before, it's pretty much the same team that did so well last season, so it can only really come down to confidence. Maybe other teams finding them out a little bit, but you wouldn't have expected the difference in performance level from this season to last season to drop off so much, just because people have worked them out a bit. So it will come down to confidence, and that's why that FA Cup win could be so important for them. But as you say, that difficult one coming up, after that, they'd need to build on the FA Cup win with a victory here and then try and get some points against Tottenham, Manchester United and Man City, which is obviously going to be so difficult. Personally, yeah, I think they are down. It's 12 points to safety now, and when you consider they haven't won a single game all season, coming up to the halfway point of the season now, it's really hard to see them survive. But I do see them getting a point on the board. Like you, I've gone 1-1 in this one. Also on Tuesday is Burnley versus Manchester United. Manchester United could go top of the table with a victory. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, so it's a really, really big game, isn't it? I think obviously, it wasn't initially scheduled. It was one that was put in, wasn't it? And now it's on Tuesday evening. And like you say, United will be looking to go to Anfield, top of the league, which would be obviously fantastic. Obviously, it's a big game this weekend, isn't there, for both teams? Obviously, for us as well, it's going to be a nice little rivalry game. So, the Burnley. Burnley been quite good at home recently, haven't they? Their results have picked up a bit. They've actually beat Manchester United, didn't they? Last time they played at Old Trafford, it seems so long. I think it was last January. Yeah, last January they won 2-0. So United won 2-0 last season at Turf Moor, and obviously United's away form this season, we all know, has been absolutely fantastic. But I thought the Watford game for United, it was a case of the FA Cup game. It was a case of winning and get through. The performance wasn't great. It made a lot of changes, and was interesting after the game came out and actually said Pogba, Shaw and Lindelof were all injured, but they've all trained today. I don't think Pogba finished the session. I should say Lindelof and Shaw did finish the session, so you'd think they'd probably play. I'd be surprised if all three didn't play. Maybe a bit of mind games, and Eric Bailly obviously is a doubt. Cavani's back, so got a lot of. I think it'll be interesting to see what Solskjaer does in terms of ahead of the Liverpool game. You know, does he bring? Obviously, Fred will play. McTominay played 90 minutes in the FA Cup, which makes you think that Matic might come in. You know, for his height against Burnley. We all know how good Burnley are from set pieces, but I probably think it will be McTominay and Fred. You know, it's the two he likes in there. Burnley, on the other hand, they had a few absentees at the weekend. I think obviously a few rested in the FA Cup, but a few. Nick Pope had a bit of an ankle injury. I think he might be okay. A couple of midfielders that they'll hope to have back. But goals, similar to Sheffield United, you know, goals have been a problem, haven't they, all season? You know, Chris Wood, Barnes, Rodriguez got talent going forward, but just struggle to see that. But like I say, you know, their form recently has been quite good, especially at home, and obviously 3 wins out of the last 4 in all competitions. Obviously beat MK Dons on penalties in the FA Cup, beat Sheffield United in their last Premier League game. So it's a big game for United. Obviously against Manchester City in the EFL Cup, they were a little bit disappointing. Had another game since then, won that. Obviously been excellent in the Premier League for quite a while now. Beat Villa, you know, and they needed 2 back-to-back wins over Villa and Wolves, which were very important. You know, didn't play well, and particularly well in either, but managed to get there in the end. So yeah, it's a really, really big game. I think United will win. I really do. I think obviously Burnley still think they've got problems. I think United have got a lot going forward. Obviously Cavani coming back. So I've gone 2-0 United here, and I really hope that they do pick up all 3 points.
Yeah, I've gone 2-1 United. I think the main danger for them, I think, in this game is it is a potential banana skin for them. There is the risk of looking ahead to Liverpool, getting carried away with the thought of going to Anfield, top of the league, above Liverpool, obviously in the table. That would mean and taking their focus maybe a bit off this Burnley game. And we've seen, as you mentioned, Burnley's recent form. They can be dangerous, and they are picking up wins on a much more regular basis now. You mentioned, like Sheffield United, their goal troubles, but they've been winning games 1-0, whereas Sheffield United have been losing games 1-0. So defensively, they've been really good. They've obviously, in this improved run, they've already beaten Arsenal. They've taken points off the likes of Everton. They've beaten Wolves. So, you know, United really do need to focus fully on this game and can't really let their eyes drift to that massive game at Anfield at the weekend on Sunday. But having said that, it's hard to back against them in their current form. I think it's 26 points of the last 30 on offer in the Premier League, which has obviously put them right up into the title race, heading towards the halfway stage of the season. Whether they can keep that up remains to be seen. I think that game at Anfield will be a real big test of their title credentials. It'll be interesting to see how they fare in that one. But yeah, I think there was a lot of talk about the players actually wanted this Burnley game before that Liverpool game, so they could go to Anfield as league leaders and put the pressure on Liverpool a bit more. They've got that. They now need to hold up their end of the bargain and actually go and get the win. But yeah, like you, I can see that happening. I've gone for 2-1 to Manchester United in this one. Big game for them. Also at 8:15 on Tuesday is Wolves versus Everton. This is one of those games between two teams that are just very hard to call in the Premier League so far this season. Wolves, they'll be pretty disappointed with their recent Premier League form. 4 games without a win since beating Chelsea. They did beat Crystal Palace in the FA Cup last time out. Everton have been alternating between defeats and victories in all competitions, but in the Premier League, pretty good form until that loss at home to West Ham, which was a bit of a disappointment for them. A bit of a surprise loss that was, considering their form heading into that. I think they'd won their 4 games prior to that in the Premier League. So they'll certainly be looking to bounce back, get their first Premier League win of the new year under their belts quickly. Looking at the table, Everton are 7th, Wolves are down in 13th, 7 points between them. So yeah, it's one of those games which is really tough to call. Wolves, as we know, have the ability to beat anyone in the league. They've got those players if they can get them fit and firing. Obviously, Jimenez still out for the foreseeable future. Everton look like they're going to be without Dominic Calvert-Lewin, which is a big blow for them. You know, he's obviously been their main man in terms of goals this season, so that's a big blow. And I can just see them cancelling each other out here. I've gone for a 1-1 draw in this one.
Yeah, I thought you would go 1-1. I've gone the same. It's one of those, isn't it, that sticks out as a 1-1 game. I thought the interesting thing with Wolves is obviously they've bought Catrone and Gibbs White, haven't they, back from loan spells, and they both came off the bench in the FA Cup, and you fancy they'd be involved again here. I think they were crying out for. I remember doing a piece a little while ago and going through their options with Jimenez out, and I think Podence has been out as well, and just not there wasn't that many options. You're looking at Fabio Silva, a player who's 18. I think he's only scored once in the Premier League this season, and he's been asked to almost lead the line, which is, he's a really talented player. He's obviously going to be a big player in the future, but I think you bring in Catrone back. He's obviously a little bit older. He's got good experience. Gibbs White is a really, really talented young player as well, and you'd fancy that he should have been involved really for Wolves this season anyway. So to have those two back, as you mentioned, Everton probably missing some key players again for this game, and it's just a weird season, isn't it? Like you mentioned, Wolves, just looking at their position in the table, like you say, 13th, but they're so tight up there, isn't it? You're looking at Everton as well, down in 7th, but level on points for 4th. Obviously, there's games in hand everywhere, not between those two. Everton and Tottenham have played 16 games, but, Villa 15, Southampton played 17. It is still difficult, I think, because it's so tight, and teams have got 2 games in hand here, 2 games in hand there. So it is a difficult one. But yeah, I've gone same as you, a draw. I just think they will cancel each other out in the end. They're both good sides, and draw here 1-1.
Yeah, 4 points separating first from 7th. It's incredible, isn't it? And obviously one of those teams in that clutch is Man City. They're in action on Wednesday against Brighton. And we've mentioned United as possible title contenders already. Man City has certainly thrown themselves back into that mix. It's taken a while until the new year, until they were really maybe tipped to overcome such their poor start and challenge for the title. But yeah, 4 points off the top of the table with 2 games in hand over Liverpool. They're looking very dangerous. And last time out in the Premier League against Chelsea, that was a really clinical and good display. And that result probably flattered Chelsea more than it did Man City. So to do that at Stamford Bridge, they do seem to be coming towards their best. They've obviously had injury problems this season. Aguero hasn't had a good run of games. He's in self-isolation now, so he's going to miss this game. But they're starting to find their feet. And obviously since that Chelsea game, it's been more good news for them. 5-0 win on aggregate over their 2 games since then in the 2 cup competitions, beating United at Old Trafford to reach the League Cup final again, and then cruising past Birmingham in the FA Cup. But yeah, they're looking very dangerous now, and I think many places will have them installed as probably favourites to win the title in their position at the moment. They're certainly they've got it in and around their hands at the moment with those 2 games in hand as well. Obviously, this being one of them over Liverpool. And they're taking on a Brighton team who are really struggling for victories. Their fight back in the Wolves draw last time out in the Premier League was good and showed lots of fight to earn them a point, to keep them 3 points above the relegation zone. And they do keep on picking up pretty regular points, which, as I've mentioned already on these podcasts, is good when you're battling towards the drop. If you can pick up points regularly, then you're going to give yourself a very good chance of survival. But they do need wins on the board. This is obviously looking like a very, very tough game for them to do so. What is it now? 8 Premier League games without a win. Still only 2 all season. So yeah, I can't see them ending that winless run here. I can see Man City. It's probably going to be a similar-ish game to what we've seen recently from Man City against the likes of Newcastle and Fulham. They won both those games 2-0. I can see them going a bit better in this one. I've gone for 3-0 in this one.
Yeah, so have I gone quite similar in this week. Yeah, 3-0 game for me. I think that you mentioned City, obviously they've had quite a lot of players out recently, and then coronavirus outbreak and little injury problems. And I think it's the side he picked against Birmingham was probably almost, strangely stronger than he wanted to go, because you fancied, people like Cole Palmer, who's obviously a talented young player, Tommy Doyle, Garcia, they'd have probably all played, Fernand Torres would have played, but he had to play a strong side. And I thought you mentioned they were good at Chelsea. They were really good. And I thought they were really good at Old Trafford as well. They went to Old Trafford not so long ago, didn't they, in the league, and were really poor. It was a goalless draw. But I thought in the EFL Cup, I thought United did okay for long periods. But I think, Ruben Diaz at the back is playing excellently, isn't he, with John Stones? It's not so long ago. I think it was when we had Luke Chadwick on, wasn't it? We were talking about centre-backs in the league and who's maybe the second best behind Van Dijk, and we both probably had Laporte up there, but I think he's injured at the moment, but he's not really getting in the team, is he, at the moment? John Stones is come back in and played really well, to be fair, and Ruben Diaz looks like, he's probably making a stake to be, one of the best centre-backs in the league. It's obviously still very early, but yeah, it's a really tough game for Brighton, isn't it? I think, Brighton played the FA Cup. They were Newport County, weren't they? I thought Newport County were quite good in that game, to be fair. I thought they were good value for maybe a win. Brighton came through on penalties in the end. It was a good game, a tough test. Obviously, changes, and there'll be changes for this game. But I remember doing the preview for that game, and I was thinking, Graham Potter's going to be thinking the Manchester City game's a bigger game, but it's very, very tough, isn't it? It's not like they're playing, Fulham at home or someone like that, where they could rest loads of players and then go in and really go for it. It's going to be a very tough game against City. And like you say, they may be favourites for the title. No, I don't think they were ever out of it, were they, even when they were playing poorly? But De Bruyne started to pick up bit better, isn't it? I know you were a little bit critical of him earlier this season. He wasn't at his best, but he was excellent at Chelsea, wasn't he? And he's coming through now. So yeah, they're going to be hard to stop. I think they'll certainly be up there. And yeah, same as you, 3-0 City.
Both going for 3-0 Man City wins and that. Okay, also on Wednesday is Tottenham versus Fulham. This was originally scheduled to be Aston Villa versus Tottenham, but Villa's coronavirus cases have meant a reshuffle. So the Tottenham-Fulham game, which was postponed from December, has now moved to Wednesday night. How do you see this one going, Matt? It's been a great 2021 for Tottenham so far, hasn't it? 3 wins on the bounce, no goals conceded.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, the FA Cup game against Marine was obviously a incredible, really occasion, wasn't it, to play a side of eighth tier side, and picked quite a strong team. Mourinho, to be fair, players off the bench as well. Bow obviously came off, and a nice 5-0 win. It was a game that Tottenham could never really win. They were expected to win, comfortably, and no one's really going to say, oh, they were fantastic in that game. But like you say, recently they've been obviously a lot better. Beat Brentford as well in the EFL Cup to reach the final, and 3-0 against Leeds in the Premier League last time out. So playing well at the moment. It's obviously not ideal because they're preparing for Villa, and then they're playing Fulham, which is probably couldn't really pick two different sides. Obviously, in terms of size of that ilk, not top sides. Villa obviously would probably go after Tottenham in certain cities, but Fulham are going to sit in and they're going to want to be difficult to beat. Obviously, Fulham have had their problems this season. They've played a Premier League game for a while, have they? Haven't played since Boxing Day was their last Premier League game. Because obviously they've had coronavirus games called off, and that's what I mean about this. Just such a strange season. Obviously, they won at QPR, didn't they, in the FA Cup, which is a really good win because it's not easy. Those sort of games obviously made changes for them, but yeah, Fulham, like you say, sitting in towards the bottom in 18th at the moment, but 3 points. This is what I mean about 3 points behind Brighton, but with 2 games in hand. So they've also got 2 games in hand over the likes of Palace, not obviously a little way ahead of them. But I think until it balances it out, obviously it's difficult to look at the table. But I still think Fulham are okay. Their position in the table, and I think they'll play Chelsea and Manchester United in there too after this one. So tough period, and they go to Brighton end of the month. So that's a big game. But yeah, I don't think they'll get any change here. To be honest, 2-0 Tottenham.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same, unfortunately. 4 draws in a row for Fulham, which is, it's not obviously as good as picking up wins, but as I mentioned for the Brighton one, they're picking up points, which is keeping them certainly in the battle for survival. And obviously one of those draws came against Liverpool, so Tottenham will be wary of that. They've proven themselves capable of getting points off the big teams in recent weeks. But yeah, Tottenham seem to have found their foot again after a bit of a poor spell. I think it was 4 Premier League games without a win before that 3-0 win over Leeds. And 2021 so far has been a great year for them, and they're very much one of those teams, 7 teams, who could arguably say are in the title race, separated by 4 points at the top of the table. This is obviously their game in hand. They could move 1 point off Liverpool. Whether they'll still be league leaders after this weekend remains to be seen, obviously, with Manchester United also in action. But yeah, as you mentioned, that Marine game, everyone expected, a big win. There wasn't much Tottenham could do aside from avoid a cup set there, which they successfully did. But yeah, Harry Kane, Son in good form. I can't see Fulham really getting anything out of this. I've gone exactly the same as you, 2-0 in this one. I think it will be interesting to see who copes with the quick change in fixture. Because as you mentioned, Tottenham preparing for it, but Fulham have also been preparing for the Chelsea game at the weekend. That's now been pushed back. And after so long without a game, Fulham have now been suddenly thrust into action at 48 hours notice or a bit more than that. So it's a test for them to adapt their game and suddenly come up with a game plan for Tottenham. But as you mentioned, Tottenham also in a similar boat. They would have been preparing for a completely different game to what the one they're actually getting. So it will be interesting to see who copes best with that. But I think Tottenham in their current form, I agree with you, 2-0 in that one. So the same on that one as well. On Thursday night, the other North London team, Arsenal, are in action. They play Crystal Palace. Arsenal's finally seem to have turned a corner. They were in dreadful form prior to their win over Chelsea in the Premier League, which came against all the odds and against the form book. But 4 wins in a row across all competitions since then. Needed extra time to beat Newcastle in the FA Cup, but their youngsters are really starting to shine a bit more. Saka, Emile Smith-Rowe, they're really starting to repay the faith that Mikel Arteta's put in them recently. 4-0 against West Brom in their last Premier League game, obviously, which is a huge victory. And suddenly they're up to 11th place and 3 points behind Chelsea. So when you consider how poor Arsenal have been, as we've said a few times, that is how quickly things can change. in the Premier League this season. Crystal Palace, they're only 1 point behind Arsenal, but they're in pretty poor form themselves. Got knocked out to the FA Cup to Wolves, beat Sheffield United in the last Premier League game, but before that, 2 defeats against Liverpool and Aston Villa, and then draw against Leicester, which is a decent result, really. The form Leicester were in, but they'll know this is a difficult game for them. And with Man City coming up after this one, it promises to be a difficult double header for them. Arsenal finding their feet again. They were criticised, rightly so, for that poor run of form, and Arteta really did come under pressure. A couple more losses, and I think they might have pulled the trigger on him, but he seems to have turned things around now. He'll be desperate to keep that going. 5 wins in a row, and suddenly everything seems a lot better, and I'm backing them to do that. I've gone for a 2-0 Arsenal win in this one.
Well, yeah, we've gone differently. I've gone 2-1 Arsenal. I just think Palace, I think they can be very tricky, can't they, Palace? Obviously, the way they play, and obviously they always seem to have a lot of injuries. You look for their injury list, they've always got players absent. Obviously, they've got players doubtful. They won at Old Trafford this season. I think they've won 3 Premier League games on the road this season, which isn't fantastic, but it's not bad by any stretch. Obviously, ran right at West Brom, didn't they? Same as Arsenal did. And I don't think it's that, you could look at Arsenal's certain ways and reasons why they're playing a lot better, but I think it might be even as simple as just players that weren't playing well, no longer playing. And the youngsters, Willian, Pepe, really poor seasons. I think obviously Saka, as I mentioned before, I think he's absolutely fantastic. Huge fan of Saka. Obviously Smith Rowe played really well, as you mentioned, and just seems to be a lot more energy in the side. Obviously Martinelli picking up that injury, the ankle injury ahead of the FA Cup game, so unfortunate, because obviously he's been out for such a long time with a knee injury. He looks like he's going to be out for a while with an ankle injury, and it's a big blow for Arsenal, because he's come back in and looked really bright and really fresh. And when you say that, I had looked at the table, but you mentioned the gap between Arsenal and Chelsea now is 3 points on the same amount of games is crazy, isn't it? When you think about how far they were down the table, and you look at Arsenal, what are they? 6 points off 4th at the minute. I mean, they couldn't, could they? They can't finish in the top 5. I don't think they will. But if they were to finish top 7, top 8, it's not what Arsenal want. But from where they were, I think that would be a decent season if they can have another FA Cup run and obviously Europa League run, etc. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think Arteta was very, very close to perhaps getting the sack. They've stuck with him, and don't get me wrong, I still think Arsenal got a lot of issues. I still think they need strengthening in a number of areas, and if they want to ever become a top 6 side, I still think they're away from that, the top 6 that have cemented themselves at the moment, with Leicester in that pack as well. So I think they're away. I think Palace could be tricky. I think they'll cause them problems. But yeah, it's a tougher game. I'd have backed to draw a few weeks ago, but I just think Arsenal will get there in the end. So I've gone 2-1 Palace. 2-1 Arsenal, sorry.
2-1 Arsenal. Both going for Arsenal victories in that one. Thanks, Matt. We will be back on Friday to look ahead to the weekend's games. In the meantime, you can find previews for all of these games and many more over on sportsmile.co.uk. You can subscribe to this podcast on all the usual channels, and you can subscribe on YouTube to make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast. We hope to see you again on Friday. Thanks for joining.